Welcome to the InProperty podcast. I'm your host, Simon Jens, and I'm the founder of Antler, the marketing agency for SME house builders. On this podcast, I speak to inspirational people in property. Hit the follow button and be the first to learn about new episodes as soon as they drop. Rob, explain your role to me as though you were explaining it to a 5-year-old.
I help people move home. So, yeah, I would say it's as simple as that, really. So whether buying or selling, I am helping somebody find a house that will be a home.
Perfect. And right now you run an incredible local agency called Rowe Co, which
Yeah.
I really want to get into that story. But before we get into that, explain to me, what does your journey look like through a estate agency and up till now?
So I have never done anything else. So I've only ever been an estate agent. And I finished college, went straight into a estate agency in Southampton as, I want to say, an 18-year-old. And here we are now, nearly 30, not quite, but nearly 30 years later, with my own agency. So yeah, I would say I've had a very traditional journey. Back in the day, that's what people did, wasn't it? So you start as a trainee somewhere as a young lad, and then you progress up the ranks and see where it goes, basically. So yeah, that's been my journey.
So very much traditional estate agency, and all in the local area?
Yeah, all Southampton. Yeah, always Southampton. A spread of city centre, village, a complete spread of roles as well. I'd say every role really that you could in what is residential sales. But I haven't actually moved that much company-wise, which I think is a nice thing. So I've only really ever worked for a small amount of companies. And yeah, been lucky enough to work with some fantastic estate agents along that journey. Perfect.
And what led to Rowe Co? How did you come to the decision to go out on your own, where you worked for limited local companies? What was the catalyst to decide to go on your own?
It wasn't necessarily planned. I was at a very good independent agency locally, and I've been there for a very long time. And I don't know if it was an age thing where it felt right to make a change, but it got to the point where I did leave and had some time off, and then was very lucky to have the opportunity to create what we now have. And we are 2.5 years down the road, and actually just moving into our new premises next week.
Amazing. And talk to me about what Rowe Co looks like today. So 2.5 years on, what does it look like today?
So we are very established in our local area. We have got a wonderful spread of clients, property, very much mid to higher end agency. We have got a great team. So we started with just 2 of us, myself and James at the office, and quickly grew to 3, 4, and we are now at 6 in total, with a new office and with expectation to, branch out further and continue to grow the team.
Amazing. And you've absolutely blown up locally. In 2.5 years, what you've achieved is phenomenal. What do you think has driven that success? What's the key ingredient that's led you to be where you are today in 2.5 years?
I honestly just think it is literally the desire to make it work and the hunger. If you look at what me and James did in year 1, it really was 7 days a week. And it was 7 till 7 every single day, for a very, very long time. And yeah, just that want to try and get it off the ground as quickly as possible, because it's a huge amount of pressure to get something from a cold start, to get something up and running, and it does take time. But I think it literally comes down to the want and desire to create something, and get it to a level where it's working. I would also say brand awareness. Again, with the social media, which we started very, very early from nothing, it has helped a huge amount. Just getting the name out there, the brand out there. I would also say previous clients, done the job a long time. So people, even not necessarily in our core patch, but in and around Southampton, people that we've moved before coming back and saying, look, we're going to move. Would you help us move? That as well. And you get to list from that previous client perspective, you get to list some really great properties that are scattered all around. So a bit of a mixture, really.
Mm. And so how many of you are there today? 5, 6?
I'm trying to think how many are there.
A handful. A handful today. Okay.
Let's say 6.
6. Okay. And what you've achieved with that, just grafting, there is, what you've said to me is you've just grafted for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And it's paid off, and it's, shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, in a world where everyone says you can have what you want overnight, and you've proven that you can have what you want quickly, but you've got to work for it. It hasn't come easy. But you have very, very quickly overtaken some pretty fierce local competition. And I remember sitting down with you 2.5 years ago and having that conversation and saying, it's a crowded market. I'm so intrigued to see how you fare, and I suppose it's fair to say that I was a bit doubtful because you had some strong players and you have absolutely cleaned up. I'd take my hat, I'm not going to take my hat off, but I would take it off to you. And what you've achieved is phenomenal. So my question for you is, in an industry right now where the trend is self-employed, everybody who is in a estate agency is being told, self-employed, come and join the self-employed model, be your own boss. In a world where everyone's pivoting to that, you have gone totally against the grain and started a traditional agency.
Very traditional.
There's a lot of traditional agencies that are even giving up their offices or have historically given up offices to become more hybrid. You have totally gone against the grain and have proven that it is possible to be an amazing success. Why do you feel that traditional agency still works? What is it that you've done at Rowe Co that has meant that you haven't been overtaken by local self-employed agents?
I remember that time we met, and I remember you asking me, how are you going to do it? And I remember leaving thinking I was incredibly vague. Because until you jump in and do it, it's very hard to try and put it into words exactly what we would do. That was right at the very start, wasn't it? Why have I gone down traditional route? I would say it's all I know. It's all I've ever done. Remember, I've never done anything else. And again, I said earlier, I have been lucky to work with some of the very, very best estate agents in Southampton, Hampshire, over there. We're talking since the 90s. I believe very much it's who you work with, who you're trained by, how much freedom you're given to learn along your journey, and it's your experiences, good and bad. And that's what I think we have a lot of. And then when you're able to do a completely cold start as your own, you can implement everything that you've learned along the last 30 years in all the different marketplaces. I think the self-employed model is very interesting, and I think that some agents are having huge success with it, but I don't think it's for everyone. I think it's you get a real variety of different estate agents, different strengths and weaknesses, and what their experiences are and their history is. It will work. It will work for some people, and it will also work in some areas. But for me, all I've ever wanted to do is a traditional high street agent, and I still believe there's room for that in the market today, and I still think there'll be room for that in the future. And that's why we're doing it this way. I think there will always be a demand for a local expert. I love the fact clients can walk in.
And do they walk in? Like clients?
Crikey, so much. I think one of the most popular ways we book valuations is walk-ins.
Wow.
But it was in other places I worked, in other areas as well. It's not just Chandler's Ford. In the other villages that I've worked at, a load of the incoming inquiries are people that just walk in. It's all local people. That's partly why we've moved premises, to have more of an impact on the high street. Huge amount walk in. don't take, I wouldn't take it away. A lot is email as well nowadays. A huge amount is, Rightmove, Zoopla inquiries that come direct. That's very, very important. And also our own website as well, having said that. But yeah, there's a huge amount of walk-in. And I think local people would like to identify with a brand, to identify with a premises, to say that is my estate agent and I'm on the market with them. I think it gives identity. So that's why we took that route.
So if you'd have gone down the self-employed route, let's say you hadn't have gone down the Rowe Co, let's build a brand, let's build a team, and it had been Rob Rowe under a network agency, do you think you'd have had the same success?
I think it would have worked, but in a very different way. Ultimately, I think one of the most important aspects of being an estate agent is valuing, and predominantly that's the bit I love, and that's the bit I've done for the longest time. And as long as I was doing it in a marketplace that I knew and loved, then yes, I think it would work. However, I think if you pick me up and put me in Swindon and said, go on, it wouldn't work. So, and that's what I believe the whole concept is, really. Local agent, an experienced agent. Again, I think with a estate agency, a client doesn't really know how long a person has been doing the job for. It's not, you don't wear a badge and say, I've been an estate agent for 3 years, or I've been an estate agent for 20 years. Or I've worked in the area for X amount of time. So I think that's key as well.
And what are the benefits for you as a traditional estate agent? I suppose one of the main things is control. Like when you come under a network, whilst you're your own boss, you're still at the mercy of the decisions that the network above you makes. What other benefits are there for those that are considering it? If there's someone watching this or listening to this thinking, I'm working in traditional estate agency, maybe they worked alongside you years ago and they're looking at your success thinking, I want a piece of that. Obviously not in Chelmsford, somewhere else. What are the benefits for them of going down the traditional route versus the self-employed route?
I think very simply team. It's having a team around you. And everybody benefits from the success or failure. It affects everybody. And again, agents I've worked at previously, it's all about team. And so I would say it's that, really. And it's hard for me to comment too much going down the self-employed route, because obviously, as I said earlier, it's not something I've done. And I do see from afar and look at some agents doing it incredibly well, and they are having a huge amount of success. So I don't think that there's one strict rule. I don't think there's one road for a estate agency in the future. I think that you can have success with various models.
And I suppose the benefit of team is, as an estate agent, you're inherently selling your time. Your time, whether it's on valuations, viewings, getting deals over the line. And when you're a team of one under a network, your time is limited. You can't leverage more time than you've got. Whereas in your situation, as you build a business, you can acquire more time by growing a team. Therefore, you can achieve more as a business. Therefore, personally, you can achieve more than perhaps you would be able to as a self-employed agent, because inherently you'd be, your earnings limit is capped by your time.
I think that if you spoke to I would presume, again, I'm presuming, but if you spoke to a self-employed agent, they'd probably say they have more time than they ever had before, because they can obviously work the hours they want to work. Whereas certainly at a large corporate agency, you're very restricted in the hours that you work. You physically have to be in that office.
So here's a question then. So and I agree with you, I think they'd say that the one...
It's one of the bonuses.
Anyone that goes self-employed, the bonus is they've gained their freedom. What you've just told me is the way that Rowe Co has grown, and the reason it's grown to the success it has, is because you have grafted for the last 2.5 years, 7 days a week, which is kind of counter to the reason to become a self-employed estate agent, which is, you've got your freedom and your time, which... you can't have your cake and eat it. Either you work really hard and you get the fruits of the success as you've demonstrated, or you go down the self-employed route and you've got your freedom, but are you going to earn as much money as you were perhaps when you were employed? Are you going to be as successful as you would be if you went down the traditional route, because you're not growing a team, which means you've got to work hard to support other people. Is I suppose my question is being self-employed actually as fruitful as being a traditional estate agent?
I think it depends. I would say at Rowe Co, the team have a huge amount of freedom because that's how we work. So we use the word traditional agency, and it is, but it doesn't mean that we work the same way I would have worked 20 years ago.
Okay.
We don't wear a suit and tie, things like that. So I would like to think we have a huge amount of freedom because we do spend so much time there. And that's, I think, something that's very, very important. If somebody has had a fantastic day, a fantastic week, and they have an afternoon that's clear, then I don't see there's any reason why they need to stick around and count the time down until 6 o'clock. We don't work like that at all. So I think you can have freedom with a traditional high street model. And yeah, hard to comment on the self-employed thing. It makes sense to me that if you are a self-employed agent, you would have more freedom because you've got more hours in the day. So you can do evening appointments and very early morning appointments. So I would have, and weekends. So I can definitely see there would be more freedom. And it's about what you put in and what you want to get out, isn't it? There isn't a rule.
Yeah.
It's up to the individual.
Yeah, I suppose for some people, the free time is more important than the money.
Yeah, then it works, doesn't it? I don't think you have to do 7 days, 7 days a week and 7 till 7. That's your choice, isn't it? What do you want to get out of it? But I just think we knew in year one we had to do that opening in the marketplace we've opened, which everybody acknowledges is an incredibly tough marketplace. No choice.
And for you as a service business, your people are your business, right? You're selling your people, their expertise, their capability. So you are fully reliant on having the best people you can find to do the job. Are you finding that the talent pool is becoming more limited because people are going self-employed? Or is there still a good talent pool to pick from that wants to be employed and join a traditional estate agency model?
Nobody that we've hired has come from a self-employed model. So that answers that, doesn't it? They've all come from what I would say a traditional high street agent.
But do you think that the talent pool going forward, if we carry on down this self-employed as the way forward route, inherently that talent pool is going to shrink? Do you think there'll always be? Do you think there'll still be someone that wants to be employed and that wants to fall within a business as opposed to work on their own? And
I'd say 100%.
Yeah.
That's what I said earlier. I think it'll be a split. I think it will be, certainly you've got to think about experience level as well. So obviously common sense is you're going to be a lot more successful if you enter a self-employed model having years of experience behind you. But if you're less experienced, I would guess, or if you're new to agency, then I would say that you would probably want to go into a more traditional route to start. But again, times are changing, aren't they?
Yeah, and perhaps it may become about identifying fresh talent, training them up, and because naturally they're going to want the experience. And if you can train them in the Rowe Co way, then you'd hope that they'd be committed to you and actually you're giving them those learnings that if they do go off one day. And
yeah, that's what the hope is. They stay. The hope is everybody stays. But we'll find out.
And talk to me about the approach of the modern day estate agent compared to what you were doing 20 years ago. So naturally there'll be elements of that traditional model 20 years ago that you've retained. Obviously social media is a big is a big priority now, but what is it? What do you place real focus and emphasis on as a business now that perhaps you didn't?
I think that nowadays you have to offer the best of everything to have a chance. And the client needs to be offered everything, the best of everything. I mean, interesting you say about social media. It's something I wasn't doing at all a couple of years ago. And obviously we do it weekly now, every single instruction, push it massively. It is the future. There's absolutely no doubt. We book viewings from social media. we sell property from social media. If you'd have told me that 2 years ago when we opened, I'd have said, nah.
Yeah. And how frequently is it? How frequently are you making sales because of social media?
Regularly, monthly, I would say, or certainly inquiries and viewings, whether people buy or not, but it's definitely another inquiry source that wasn't something that existed years ago. It just wasn't a thing. It wasn't something I ever really did at all until Rowe Co. But I just think from a brand awareness point of view, it was something that we wanted to push, and I'm really glad that we did. Most agents are on Instagram now, aren't they? They're on Facebook. They're aware. Even if some are just starting it now, it is something. It's not going to go away. It's to get a property out there. If people, a job as an agent is to fully expose a property to the marketplace. That's an amazing way of doing that.
So if Zuckerberg were, let's say, to pull the plug on Meta tomorrow, that would have a pretty damaging effect on your business. Social media has got to that point where it's
on the brand, isn't it? And again, brand awareness.
Yeah, amazing.
If you're starting from nothing, the brand doesn't exist. How quickly can you get a brand out there? It's one of the easiest ways, I'd say.
And those kind of, because I still think there are people that don't use social media. There's lots of estate agents that don't use it, and I've come across a few recently. And I'd love to know why they haven't embraced it. You've proven that by embracing it, there's results there to be had and for the taking. Talk to me about organic social. So the kind of people that are sitting there and then they land in your inbox because they've seen a video you've put on social media. Are these the sort of people that are already in market, or is it that they have come across one of your videos because one of their friends has shared it or whatever? How are these people, how are they getting to your inbox?
It's a mix. So we get a lot of new clients that will not even find us directly from social media, but they're aware of our social media when we meet them for the first time. So a valuation will be booked, we'll go and see them and they'll say, I've seen your video on this one, or I saw that property, So you find out it plays a part without them directly even contacting us through it. They're aware of it. So it is something that is, it's here to stay, I think.
And for buyers that come through social media, are they people that are actively sitting on Rightmove and in market, or are these people that might have made a decision? I've seen that house. Obviously, you've got to be proceedable to be able to do anything. But are you finding that it's active buyers that are landing in your Instagram inbox, or are these people that are, passive and they've seen something and it's piqued their interest?
Bit of both. I would say that Rightmove, any serious buyer at the moment is still on Rightmove 24/7. They just are, and that is still where a massive percentage of incoming leads for all agents come from. But that doesn't mean they won't have seen a property on social media as well. I guess it's what they see first. If you're a buyer and you're serious about buying and finding a property, you do everything, don't you?
Sure.
You're not just going to limit yourself to one way of finding. Certainly if you get to that stage where you need to buy, you need to find, it's a bit of everything, isn't it? Because you never really know when or where you're going to see that property. It could even be a for sale board. It could be anything, couldn't it? And that's why I said earlier, the job is to expose the property fully to the marketplace. So you get the opportunity for any potential buyer to see that home.
And talk to me about Rightmove. So obviously we mentioned social media is a good lead source. Rightmove is a good lead source. Are you using any of the portals?
Zoopla, Rightmove and Zoopla are the two that we go on.
Zoopla's good?
Yeah, it's decent. The bulk of the leads from portals will come from Rightmove, but again, I would imagine that's the same for most estate agents.
And do you think it's a demographic thing? So Zoopla will say that the area you operate in is perhaps not elderly, that's the wrong term, but the more mature buyer and seller who will naturally associate with, they would go to Rightmove because that's the brand that they've grown up with. Zoopla like to say that they're ready for the next market, who've perhaps have rented and they found their rental through Zoopla and then they think they'll sell through Zoopla. Would you say that rings true? Or?
I wouldn't say that's our marketplace.
Okay.
I'd say it's a lot of families. It's probably mainly families.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just find most people would, their first port of call would be Rightmove.
So if you had to put all of your marketing spend into one platform, sounds like it would be.
Yeah, it would be that, yeah.
Rightmove. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and so tell me why you think your model's working. Why is the traditional agency model working when the narrative is it doesn't? You know, if you see the marketing of self-employed networks, they're saying this is the way. Why is it that your model works better, do you feel?
I think it is working. I don't feel that there's a doubt that it's a high street agency is not working. It might not be working for every agent in a town or a village, but I guarantee it'll be working for somebody. If you look at who are the market leaders in most areas currently, I would say there probably would be a independent high street agent. From my experience, that's the way I see it. In my town and the areas that we work, I would say as a general broad brush stroke, the leading agent is still, and always has been since I've been in agency, being an independently owned traditional estate agent. I don't think that's changed.
And you entered a very competitive marketplace, you know, Chalmers Ford, and I know that you're listing properties way outside of Chalmers Ford as well. How have you? I know it's graft. You said it's graft is the reason you've got to where you've got to, but you know, some might say maybe the others became complacent and someone else came in more hungry and has taken market share. But if there's someone else that's looking to do this locally in their town, what would your advice be to shake up a fairly tight local market? If you were to attack another marketplace, what is it that you've done and how would you do it again?
You have to offer more. You have to offer the best of everything. So I think in any marketplace, if you're going in, it's very, very hard if you are not a brand that's not known. I've done cold starts for other brands that are very, very well known from scratch in a village or a town, and that is hard, but it's a lot harder doing it with a new brand that nobody knows. And it is a case of offering the client, so there's no doubt they get the best of everything, more than another agent can offer them, whether that is marketing, brand, staffing, team, or simply your time. You have to offer more across the board.
So talk to me about those first 3 months. So let's say I'm thinking, I'm not, by the way, just to caveat, let's say I was thinking I'm going to go out and set up an estate agency in Bishop's Waltham, for example.
Yeah.
I want to enter a fairly saturated market with some pretty established players. What in those first 3 months of Rowe Co, what did you do? What was it? What was your pitch to sellers when they didn't really know your brand from Adam and they've got some established, you know, sitting on that same sofa an hour before perhaps with some of the more established brands? What was it you were saying that won you those instructions?
The pitch actually was that we're new. So you kind of said it. It was a very open and honest discussion about what we are. And do you know what? A lot of sellers really bought into it and really liked the fact it was a fresh and new choice that was a little bit different, rather than the agents that have been there for 20 years that are super established. People like something new and people like something different. And I think as long as you can communicate to somebody thinking of selling or moving just how much you want to help them with their move, as long as you can communicate that, then you'll have success.
And so I'm going to talk detail, did you have to make sacrifices on things like fees in those early days to win the...
Initially, yes. Yeah. So we'll always try and be as competitive as possible. But I do think at the start, you have to take a view to get off the ground, again, to offer the best of everything. You have to look at everything that you offer.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. You've got to entice them, haven't you?
You do. Until you get to a place where you are established.
And for how long did you have to operate on that kind of reduced fee model? Is that for an extended period of time or?
I would say with fees, certainly in our first year, we were able to be incredibly competitive and offer the maximum amount of value that we could. But I couldn't put an exact pin on it.
Yeah, well, but I think that's quite insightful, because I think a lot of people are probably crunching numbers to work out how can they do it, how do they achieve it, and I think you have to make sacrifices, to get ahead. And once you've established your name and your brand, then you can afford to push. So ultimately you've got to convince the person in front of you to buy from you, and money talks, doesn't it?
And it's not all about fees. And I think sometimes perhaps people that aren't in a estate agency think it is. It isn't. It can actually put clients off by being seen as being too cheap. It's not what every client wants, and in actual fact, certainly where we are now, it's not all about fees. People want value for money, but cheap isn't always best. People want service.
And what's the most important thing right now in this market? If someone wants to sell their home, I know there are some people that are thinking, well, if it sells, it sells. But if someone is out there thinking, I want to sell my home, I don't want to wait months and months to get an offer, what's the most important thing right now?
At the moment, and the market is ever changing, it's never fixed. Property market is not a straight line. It's ups and downs, and you catch it on highs and lows, and it's fluid situation. At the moment, right now, today, price is key. We are working in a exaggerated buyer's marketplace. The buyers have full control at the moment, and as a seller right now, it's very, very difficult. Price has a huge effect. My opinion at the moment right now is, as a seller, you are better pricing for the money that you want and holding for that price, treating it more like a fixed price. That's not always the case. The market is ever changing, and certainly in a seller's market, when we were in COVID, that market, as a seller, you could ask whatever you wanted. You were guaranteed viewings, probably guaranteed to sell your house for more than you're on for anyway, and probably guaranteed an open day. It's not that marketplace anymore. So you need to price sensibly, price for what you want. And we're finding that buyers are prepared to pay that price if it shows value for money. But on top of that, you also need the exposure. You need a good, experienced agent that's going to get your house out there. You want the best photography, the best marketing, all the bells and whistles that you could get to attract a buyer.
And no doubt you have valuations today with people whose neighbour's house sold during COVID for this premium price, and you're trying to manage expectations. How do you do that?
Just be as upfront and honest as you can, trying to talk about the market as a whole, not just somebody's individual property. I think you talk about the local market as a whole and what other people are experiencing. I think it can be very difficult as a seller in this marketplace because you feel you're on your own and you feel a difficult journey you're experiencing, or a slow marketplace. It's just your property. It's not. It's everybody. And I think a lot of the times it's quite healthy to share that. Share other people's experience, how long they've been on the market, how many viewings they had, what the response they had. But we've now successfully sale agreed a property. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, but you've got to go on that journey.
And there's a lot of cost when you take on an instruction. There's a lot of cost
massively
involved with that. So let's say there's a seller out there that's like, nope, I'm not taking it. My house is still worth what it was worth during COVID. Do you walk away from people that want to list at too high a price? How do you manage that situation?
I think every scenario is different, and every property, every client, their journey will be different, and you just have to make a decision on whether you feel you can work with that client and if it's the right thing for them and the right thing for us. I think there's no harm in having a slightly longer journey if the client is in that place. It's their call,
and I suppose understands the impact.
They understand, what is our plan? So when we list a property, we'll talk about a client's timeline. It's not just a case of putting a value or a worth on a property. It's actually sitting down and talking about what is our plan, how are we going to market it, what do you want, what's important to you, and how long are we going to give that? And how do we review it along the way as well? I'll often go out and see people halfway through a marketing term to sit properly and have a full review and plan the next month. You know, if you're 1 month into it, go and see them, see where we've got to. What have we achieved, good and bad? Plan that next month. It's all just communication.
And on communication, so that one of the biggest pieces of feedback I hear from people that talk about estate agents is, I don't know what's going on. You know, I've had a viewing and I haven't heard anything. And how do you manage communication within Rowe Co with your sellers and your buyers?
So we try and give as much feedback as we can at all times.
Is that done verbally, or do you use a portal,
everything.
or how do you? Okay.
So if it's done perfectly, and we're far from perfect, but if it's done if it is done perfectly, then as a seller you should get contact from whoever's done the viewing from the team same day. So a phone call after to say, I've just finished the viewing, went well, all locked up. We'll give you further feedback next day. Then you should get an email that's as detailed as possible with feedback, and on top of that, probably another phone call. So that's just one viewing. It doesn't always work like that. And the other thing I would say is feedback's so important, but it's also very difficult, because if a potential purchaser views a property and they generally decide they don't want to buy it, it can be quite difficult to get clear, usable feedback for a seller.
And that's all the seller wants to know as well. Why didn't they want it? What's wrong with my house?
But then often a potential purchase buyer doesn't actually really know. It
a feeling. And
it is.
Yeah.
And people have always said that property, you know, if you love it, you walk in the door and you know. It's very hard to feed that back to a seller if they don't. And sometimes there's obvious reasons, and that's very easy to share. And sometimes it's things you can work on with a seller to fix or get over a hurdle with. Sometimes you can't. And but it's very difficult as the agent to feed that back, because for a seller they want specific identifiable feedback.
So are you just really honest with that then? If the seller's there pushing, well, why? I can't tell you, you know, they just know it's not for them. I suppose that's...
Yeah, we'll always try and be as constructive as possible with feedback. And generally people will share with you if something's not for them. But they'll be much more focused on the one they're buying.
Yeah, and it's, you know, having been in that boat when you're selling your own home and you want to know, you know, you spent time cleaning up and moving all the crap out of the way so people can do a viewing, and you're emotionally invested into the sale and you want to know, you know, what's going on. And I think, which I understand why it's a common frustration from sellers.
Remember, everybody's different. So sometimes the feedback might not make sense to you, but it might make sense to somebody else. And your motivations to buy or sell, or what you're looking for in a property, will be completely different to somebody else's. And it might contradict with the seller. So a viewer will often not necessarily like something a seller would really like, but it's because everybody has different priorities for what they want out of their home.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you were to sell your house tomorrow, so let's say you had to list with a different estate agent, not yourself, what is it that you would be looking for in an estate agent? What's the most important thing that you want from an agent?
Very simply, experience. So the first go-to, I would say to anybody, in my opinion, is how long have they been doing the job? What's their experience been like? Do they know the area? Are they selling in the area? Are they active in the area? But yeah, the go-to is experience. Okay.
And would you base experience on, is that an age thing? So if you, let's say you had a young nipper in front of you that, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I guess it is in a way, but
yeah,
I'm not saying that you have to be elder.
An 80-year-old estate agent
could be too experienced.
Yeah. Okay. And talk to me about the use of video. So you guys are very creative. You do weekly updates. When you list a property, you do a video. What's your approach? The social media landscape at the moment fascinates me, because I think you've only got to look at America and what's going on there to see what's going to end up happening over here.
Yeah, it's inevitable, isn't it?
Yeah. So what's your approach to video?
If you watch our videos, then you could see I have sung and danced around the office, a Christmas video.
But when you're doing
what is the
instruction,
approach?
when you're doing an instruction, you're not. You get some agents that will stand outside the house and introduce the listing, and then walk in to nice music and do the ta-da hands in every room.
That's the most common, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
you guys don't do that.
try not to.
Yeah, so
although we have many times.
and as have many and are many, but I think people are moving on from that towards a more storytelling approach.
Yeah, definitely. So we will try and be as varied as we can now. Try and keep it interesting. Try and pick out the highlights of the home. But I would say we're still on a journey with that. So, it's something we've only been doing for the last couple of years. I would say we're all a lot better at it than we were when we first started. I couldn't tell you where we'll be in a year with that, but probably different to what we're doing now.
And how do you attack that? So when you're looking to create a video, is it a team thing? Do you all sit down and think, right, we've got to shoot today, that's the house. Everyone sort of gets their heads together and decides what that video is going to be? Or is it the individual that's responsible for that instruction?
Can be both. Okay. I wouldn't say there's a set rule with that. I think it depends on the actual home. And sometimes whoever's taking it on may be inspired, or they will have involved the seller. So what does the seller want? What does the seller like? And it's a conversation. Other times you might scratch your head as a team and think, right, how shall we do this? Where are we best placed to create an awesome video for something? I would say there's not really a strict rule for that. And also length of time is important as well. You mentioned earlier when we were talking, we've just listed a huge house, stunning, probably one of the best homes I've ever been in. And that's a 4-minute video, I believe. But we felt it deserved it. And on that one, we're not even in the video because I thought it was the wrong thing to say. What am I going to say?
Big house.
But but most of our videos are a lot shorter. And actually, at the moment, if you ask me from a timing point of view, I'd say that they're probably shorter and sharper is better because people skip past. But when you get something really exceptional, you have to look at each property individually.
And I'm assuming that a seller's expectations now are the fundamentals, floor plan, some kind of listing going onto the portals, photography. Is video a expectation now? Is that included as part of your fee, or are these kind of things that you
It's all included. It's all included. We don't charge extra for any of that.
So it's now a standard. That is.
It is for us. Yeah. Unless not all properties. It doesn't suit all properties, but it's certainly something we will always look at with every property that we go out to. Is it the right thing to do?
And what's the best marketing approach?
Yeah, how's it going to come across best? How do you launch it to the market in the best way, the most suitable way?
Is there a trend that you've noticed about the videos that land really well compared to the ones that perhaps don't? Have you noticed any trends in that?
It's something I'm really starting to watch and monitoring much closer, because I would say if you look at the spread of videos that we do on social media, the view rate is incredibly diverse, and it's not necessarily the property that you would expect that gets the highest views. But I don't really have an answer to that.
So there's some kind
I'd like to know. You probably know better than I do on that.
Yeah, I mean, what we see, we've been analysing a lot of video, and unsurprisingly, the most successful videos are the ones with the strongest hook. Those first 2 or 3 seconds, if you get the right hook, you engage, and generally they carry on viewing and sharing. I think that's why the ta-da outside a house videos are kind of going down the pan, because people are bored of them.
Well, it's ta-da and skip past, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, you think you've got people that are choosing to use their social media in their free time that don't want to be advertised to. If you can tell a story, like you guys have started to do, if you can have a really strong hook that means people want to stay on that video and understand what's going to happen next, naturally that increases engagement because it's more interesting and entertaining to watch. It doesn't feel like it's an ad that doesn't feel like an ad, right? That's what we say to clients whenever we're doing paid social. We're talking organic, but if we do paid social, it's even more important because you're paying to be in someone's feed, and we're all so banner blind today by seeing adverts. We just glaze over them and scroll past them. So if you can create something that doesn't feel like an ad, it feels entertaining. There's some really, really great examples out there at the moment. And particularly, like I said, if you look at America and what's going on there, I suppose it's slightly different because of the realtor model, where they're independent and it's them and their personality, and
Yeah.
they can be a bit more personal, and it's kind of almost verging on like comedic and entertaining.
Definitely.
And I think you've got to find that line, particularly, it depends on who your audience is and where you sell and your demographic. But I think every brand at the moment, we've been having conversations recently with some pretty serious house builders, and they're done with the polished approach. They want to appear more user generated, more entertaining, and the first step is, where are those red lines? Where does our brand start and end, and how close can we go to them?
Yeah.
Because what you don't want to do is undermine your brand, and then all that hard work you've put in for the last 2.5 years could be undone in a couple of videos, can't it?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. Like you're saying, some of the big builders or large corporate estate agents that have a very established brand and an identity that is their fixed identity and has been for decades. If they don't do entertaining social media or something that perhaps is a little bit funny or interesting, it won't work. So you're kind of, your hands forced to do something that is possibly against what their brand has been for a very, very long time. So
Absolutely.
it'll be interesting to watch that.
And arguably, you could say that perhaps that's the reason why companies like yourselves, fairly recent, and the self-employed estate agents, these independents, have taken market share off those guys because they are more relevant.
A little bit
they
more freedom.
and they appear more creative, entertaining. I suppose if I was to sell my house today, would I want a big a big mainstream brand, one of the top recognized brands, or would I want someone who is dynamic, creative, got a good local social media following? If they sell my house, that's food on their table as opposed to just being swallowed up by the big corporate budget. I think it's quite a compelling proposition, and I think things like more personable social media, which is engaging, entertaining, rather than just an advert, is naturally going to go further than probably I would assume the approach of the traditional brands who have to toe that corporate line. It's very hard for them to deviate from that, isn't it?
It is. Well, but I think it'll be interesting to watch that, because I think they will probably want to in years to come.
And interestingly, you look at, Knight Frank recently announced their self-employed model. Whether it's I don't quite know if that's the technical term for it, but effectively they're saying that realtor model where you come under the Knight Frank brand and you are your own agent. But I would imagine they've still got to protect the brand. So whilst you might feel like you've got the freedom, you'll still be told what you can and can't do, I'd have thought. Whereas having that total freedom, like I say, we look to America first. That's what's going on there. I'll be very, very interested to see over the next couple of years
where it does go. It feels a real changing marketplace, doesn't it? For agents, for people moving and home, buying, selling, it's definitely a shifting market, isn't it?
And do you think, obviously America's very highly regulated, over here estate agency isn't. Do you think regulation would be a good thing for the market?
I think it would, yeah. I think it would. I think it may well be something that is inevitable. But yes.
Because I suppose the downside at the moment is you could have someone very young and inexperienced, and they've got the ability to sell someone's biggest asset and can be relatively uneducated in that respect.
Yeah.
And whereas I guess the beauty of America is the system, you know how it works. It's I suppose there's good and bad sides to both, isn't there?
Yeah, but then I think it depends also on somebody starting out. It's who they are working for and how experienced is that team and how established is that team, and what can they train and pass down to somebody starting out in estate agency.
So if someone was coming in cold, let's say they've got some experience of the sector, I don't know, let's say they've been in conveyancing and they've been tempted, and I don't even know if the networks do this, if your self-employed model agents do this, but is it possible, do you think, for someone to go from that role to thinking, let's say they've received a really good pitch as to why they should become a self-employed agent. Do you think it's possible to transfer straight into a estate agency from cold without the experience you've had and be successful if they understand the marketing side?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's lots of experience of people doing that. I think you can. Remember, it's sales, isn't it? Fundamentally, estate agency is selling. So I think that yes, you can move from one career path to another career path. It's whether you'll like it. It's whether it's right for you. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hours. But I absolutely love it, and the team love it, and I wouldn't want to do anything else.
So it's interesting you say it's sales, because I suppose from my point of view, I've always thought, I guess because I'm a marketing person, I think estate agents is all about marketing. It's all about exposure and presentation and, I suppose naively, without estate agency experience, think it's all about marketing. But you say it's all about sales, which is interesting.
It's a sales job, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ultimately, we need to sell your house.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to sell. I guess you've got to sell your services to a seller. You've got to sell the house to a buyer. So yeah, undoubtedly, still very, very, very much sales. What do you think the industry will look like in 10 years?
That's the big question, isn't it? Which what we've spoken about earlier will be very interesting to see the impact of what we've been calling, self-employed model, because I think inevitably that is going to have a huge influence over the next 10 years. I personally still believe that there will be very, very strong traditional high street agents that have a huge effect on local marketplaces. I think social media will have a huge effect. Marketing, everybody has to level up with photography, marketing, exposure. Every client wants the absolute best of everything now and expects it. So, for success, you have to offer that as an agency. So I think sellers' expectations will increase on what they want from their agent. It will be interesting over the next 10 years to see how many estate agents there are on a high street. I think that will probably change, because although I believe there is a huge future in that, whether or not there's room for as many as there are down pick a high street, I don't know.
And let's just imagine with me for a moment that I had a £500,000 car. I don't. So no. I could quite easily go onto Auto Trader, eBay, wherever someone buys a £500,000 car, and sell it independently. And I know that the estate agency world has experimented with that, with allowing people to sell their asset. I could probably sell a higher value car on Auto Trader, eBay, and would struggle to sell a lower value house myself. Can you see a time coming where people could sell their own house more easily and will sell their own house, or do you still think that there's going to be?
I personally don't think that will happen. I think a lot of people don't want to. They wouldn't want to do that. I think a lot of people appreciate what an estate agent does do. It's the biggest thing you're ever going to do for most people. A move and selling their home is the biggest thing financially for them. Do you want to do that on your own? Or do you want somebody else to do it for you and pay for that? I think in the future, I don't think that will change.
And do you feel that's why that model hasn't worked? Because effectively we've got uneducated people trying to sell a high value asset.
I just think it's interesting to think that a lot of clients that we'll deal with haven't actually moved a huge amount of times in their life. So it's not something that people are necessarily experienced in, and they may be incredibly successful in their own field and where their career's at, but it doesn't mean that you have a huge amount of experience in buying and selling property. So certainly for me, I would always want to go to somebody that has that experience and can guide and take the weight off your shoulders. And I don't think that will change.
Fair enough. What do you know about estate agency now that you wish you'd known about on day one?
Day one when I was 18?
If there's one thing that you could tell 18-year-old Rob.
I was just given a bag of keys on day one and say,
go find the right houses.
Here's a photocopy of the diary, and I had a map with a highlighter, and that was that. That's all I knew then. It's a really, really tough one, because obviously you go from knowing nothing to having been experienced.
And technology is around that wasn't around then. But is there anything now, if you could say to 18-year-old Rob, this is my one bit of advice for you as an estate agent?
I think it would be to expose yourself to all the different aspects of what estate agency is as quickly as possible. Because remember, you're walking to an estate agency and there'll be, 6 or 7 people sat there doing a job, but actually probably what they do day to day is all completely different. So this is from doing viewings to sales progression to valuing. There's so many different varieties within that one group of estate agents. And I think going back then, perhaps I wouldn't have expected that,
Yeah, for sure. So to close, if it were to all go south, God forbid, today, what would you do tomorrow?
The problem is I don't know how to do anything else.
Be an estate agent, I guess. Is the...
As I said earlier, I don't have any other skills, so I'd have to try and start again.
So would you go again and build another Rowe Co version 2? Would you self-employed? Would you join another estate agent? What would you?
I honestly don't know, but what I can say is, for me personally, it's all I've ever done, and I think it is all I ever will do.
Yeah, amazing. Look, and I think like we've covered, it's where the trend and the narrative is self-employed agents. You have proven incredibly how amazing the opportunity is, even in the traditional estate agency route. So, I'm very, very I respect you massively for what you've achieved in 2.5 years, and I can't wait to watch and see how Rowe Co dominates the local market in the next 2.5 years.
Yeah, we shall see.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in. See you again next time.